from a plane that lost control and crashed into the open sea in seconds. A plane that lost control seconds before landing ended up crashing on the highway. Even a plane that hovered for a few seconds before crashing. What you're about to see are the top 7 plane moments so powerful you'll never truly forget them. If you're having lunch, enjoy. Let's start with the first accident, when a plane, while about to land, lost control and crashed on the runway. We're talking about the Fly Dubai Boeing 737 flight.
3:40 in the morning. The sky above Rostov-on-Don is pitch black, cloaked in storm clouds and battered by gusts of over 60 kilometers per hour. A Fly Dubai Boeing 737 with 62 people on board aligns with the runway. They've already tried once. It didn't work. They've spent more than 2 hours circling in the sky, waiting for the right moment to land. Now, they're going to try again. The plane begins its final descent. The wind shakes the fuselage. Visibility is near zero. Suddenly, a warning blares in the cockpit. Pull up! Pull up! And in an instant, the aircraft plunges nose first toward the ground at over 600 kilometers per hour. There was no time to react, no second chance. What happened to Fly Dubai Flight 981 wasn't a technical failure. It was a silent tragedy, built in the sky, minute by minute. What caused an experienced crew flying a perfectly functional aircraft to crash just meters from the runway after nearly 3 hours in the air? This is the story of the Fly Dubai Boeing 737 flight. Are you ready? Let's get started. On March 19, 2016, Fly Dubai Flight 981 took off from Dubai, headed to Rostov-on-Don, a city in southwestern Russia. It was a nighttime, low-cost flight with 62 people on board, 55 passengers and 7 crew members. At the controls, Captain Aristos Sokratus, an experienced pilot from Cyprus with over 5,700 flight hours. Beside him, First Officer Alejandro Oliva Cruz from Spain, young but well-trained and capable. Both men were familiar with this route. They had flown it many times before. The aircraft was a Boeing 737-800 in excellent condition, just 5 years old. Everything was routine: the flight plan, the departure, the onboard systems. But there was one threat they couldn't control: the weather at their destination. And from the very beginning, they knew this night wouldn't be easy. At 1:30 a.m., Fly Dubai 981 begins its final approach to Rostov-on-Don Airport. But from the cockpit, the view is disturbing. Strong crosswinds, heavy rain, and low clouds reduce visibility to almost zero. The runway appears and disappears. The aircraft shakes, landing gear is down, and just 340 meters above ground. The pilots decide to abort the landing. They perform what's called a go-around. In aviation, a go-around is not an emergency. It's a safe, even routine decision when landing conditions aren't stable. But here's the problem. The weather won't improve, and there are no nearby airports with better conditions. So Flight 981 climbs again and starts circling above Rostov, waiting. What no one knows yet is that this wait will mark the beginning of the end. Minutes after the go-around, Flight 981 remains in a holding pattern, circling above Rostov-on-Don. The wind doesn't let up. The rain keeps falling. Visibility stays near zero. Other aircraft make a different call. They divert to alternate airports, but Fly Dubai 981 keeps waiting. What initially seemed like a tactical decision soon turns into a psychological strain. The crew has now spent over 2 hours in the air with no clear outcome. Fatigue begins to set in, and here comes a silent enemy: exhaustion. Studies have shown that fatigue can reduce a pilot's reaction time as much as alcohol. After hours of nighttime flight, intense focus, and non-stop stress, the mind wears down, reflexes dull, judgment weakens. No one on board realizes it, but they are getting dangerously close to the moment when good decisions stop being made, and the worst is still ahead. But before continuing, if you like this video, please subscribe. It will help me a lot. 3:40 a.m. After nearly 3 hours in the air, the pilots of Flight 981 decide to try one more time. The second approach begins with careful maneuvers, but the wind is still fierce and visibility hasn't improved. At about 220 meters above ground, the aircraft begins to destabilize. It drifts slightly off course. The crew decides to abort the landing again. They initiate a go-around. The captain pushes the throttles to full power, but makes a fatal mistake. Unknowingly, he pulls back sharply on the controls, raising the nose far beyond what the aircraft can handle. The Boeing 737 pitches up aggressively, loses speed, and drops nose first. Within seconds, the aircraft transitions from climbing to falling, almost vertically. It hits the ground at over 600 kilometers per hour. The plane disintegrates on impact. There are no survivors. It all happened in less than 20 seconds. And in that brief window, there was no time to fix it, no time to even understand it. It was a moment, as brutal as it was irreversible.
The investigation after the crash found no technical faults in the aircraft, no maintenance issues, no system failures. The Boeing 737 was working perfectly. What happened that morning was a tragic case of human error, triggered by a silent mix of factors: extreme fatigue, growing tension, hostile weather, and a cockpit where, under pressure, decisions stopped being clear. In the final seconds, the captain correctly initiated a go-around, but performed the maneuver with excessive nose-up angle. The aircraft climbed too steeply, lost speed, and fell. Neither he nor his co-pilot had time to react. Investigators concluded that spatial disorientation also played a key role. In darkness, storm, and exhaustion, the brain can lose track of what's up and what's down. And when that happens 300 meters from the ground, the margin for error vanishes. Fly Dubai Flight 981 left a painful lesson that in aviation, the biggest threat isn't always mechanical. Sometimes, it lives in the tired mind of the person flying the plane. Today, a monument in Rostov-on-Don bears the names of the 62 souls who never came home. Because one night, circling over an impossible runway, the sky became their cage, and the earth their fate. And in that instant, everything changed forever. And although that accident was unusual, the other one is even more so, because the flight was accidentally involved in a war. We are talking about Malaysia Airlines Flight 17. On July 17, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight MH17 took off from Amsterdam heading to Kuala Lumpur, but it never made it. Just 3 hours later, the aircraft vanished from radar over eastern Ukraine. What happened next shocked the entire world and permanently changed the rules of flying over conflict zones. MH17 was a Boeing 777, cruising at 33,000 feet, flying a route used by dozens of international airlines that same week. The crew was calm, the weather was perfect, and the aircraft was in excellent condition. But beneath that airspace, a violent conflict was unfolding on the ground. Armed groups were fighting for control of the region, and both sides had access to surface-to-air missile systems. At 1:20 p.m. UTC, without warning, a Buk surface-to-air missile was launched from rebel-controlled territory. The missile locked onto the aircraft's heat signature and struck the forward section of the fuselage. The explosion instantly incapacitated the crew, destroyed critical systems, and caused the plane to break apart mid-air. Fragments were scattered over 50 square kilometers, and every person on board, 298 people, including families, researchers, and children, lost their lives instantly. The images of debris fields across sunflower fields in Ukraine became one of the most haunting scenes in modern aviation. The investigation was one of the most complex in aviation history. The Dutch Safety Board concluded that MH17 was mistakenly targeted by a Buk missile transported into the region the same day. The aircraft was flying at an altitude considered safe, but conflict zone intelligence was incomplete, and commercial aviation authorities hadn't fully assessed the real threat. In simple terms, the crew did nothing wrong. The aircraft had no failures. The route was technically approved, but the risk was underestimated, and MH17 became a tragic victim of a war it had nothing to do with. The event forced airlines worldwide to radically change how they evaluate overflight risks, creating new protocols to avoid active conflict zones, even at high altitudes. But although this accident was unusual, the next one was even worse, because it crashed into the sea in seconds, ending the lives of hundreds of people. We are talking about Alaska Airlines Flight 261.
Center Alaska 261, we are in a dive here. But we've lost vertical control of our airplane.
The Alaska Airlines MD-83 zooms over the California coast. It's a routine, calm flight, like hundreds that take off and land every day. But suddenly, a metallic explosion rocks the plane. The aircraft plummets, passengers scream, and in the cockpit, the pilots struggle with unresponsive controls. The plane plummets violently, as if dragged into the Pacific Ocean. The seconds seem endless, and when everything indicates there's no way out, the pilots achieve the impossible: stabilize it. The momentary silence in the cockpit is mistaken for hope, for the idea that the worst is over. But that calm is merely a cruel deception, because just moments later, the plane loses control again, tilting dramatically. Now, the battle seems impossible to win. What was supposed to be an ordinary flight between Puerto Vallarta and San Francisco would end up becoming one of the most shocking tragedies in the history of modern aviation. And in the next few minutes, you'll find out what really happened inside Alaska Airlines Flight 261. It was the afternoon of January 31st, 2000. Alaska Airlines Flight 261, a McDonnell Douglas MD-83, was preparing to take off from Puerto Vallarta, bound for San Francisco. A total of 88 people were on board. For all of them, it was an ordinary flight, but in just a few minutes, it would turn into an unforgettable nightmare. In the cockpit were Captain Ted Thompson, with more than 17,000 flight hours, and First Officer Bill Tansky, with almost 9,000. Two experienced pilots, respected for their professionalism. No one could have imagined they would be tested in a way they had never faced before. The initial atmosphere was that of any vacation trip. Children playing, couples resting, families eager to return home. Everything seemed calm, but that calm was deceptive. The plane was already carrying a hidden problem, one that had been reported some time ago and that afternoon was about to manifest itself in the worst way. It was the horizontal stabilizer, a critical component that keeps the plane level in flight. Without it, controlling the aircraft would be virtually impossible. And just as the MD-83 was gaining altitude, the pilots would begin to sense that something was wrong. Mid-climb, the pilots feel something unsettling. The controls feel stiff, heavy, almost locked. It's not turbulence. It's the horizontal stabilizer, the part that keeps the plane level. Suddenly, the MD-83 pitches sharply downward. The captain and first officer pull with all their might to regain control. It's like fighting an invisible giant. From the ground, the engineers try to give instructions, but nothing seems to work. Every second, the plane's response worsens, and the crew already knows. If that stabilizer fails completely, there will be no way to control the plane. Suddenly, the stabilizer gives way. The plane plummets, as if it had lost its wings. Passengers are thrown against their seatbelts, drinks fly through the air, and screams fill the cockpit. In the cockpit, the pilots struggle with superhuman strength. The MD-83 plummets hundreds of meters in seconds, and all seems lost. But against all odds, they manage to stabilize it. The relief lasts only a moment, because everyone in the cockpit knows the fault is not resolved, and the next crash could be the last. For a moment, the plane seems to respond, but suddenly the stabilizer fails again. The MD-83 pitches down brutally, entering a second, even more violent dive. The pilots struggle, shout instructions, and try everything they can. The controls no longer respond. Every movement is useless. The plane spins, pitches, and begins to descend uncontrollably. And in that moment, everyone understands the truth. This is the final battle.
The Alaska Airlines MD-83 is no longer responding. The cockpit is in chaos. The plane enters a final dive, descending at a speed impossible to control. The passengers feel gravity pulling them down, objects flying, and the sensation is that of an inevitable abyss. Outside, the blue Pacific sky contrasts with the desperation within. In the cockpit, Captain Ted Thompson and First Officer Bill Tansky continue fighting until the last second. They don't give up. Even though they know the aircraft is beyond recovery, their instinct is to keep fighting for every life on board. At 4:22 p.m., the plane crashed into the Pacific Ocean, about 4 kilometers off the coast of California. There were no survivors. And what you're about to hear is even more shocking: the actual audio from the black box of this flight. An authentic record of the last moments in the cockpit. Warning, discretion advised.
Feel that?
Yeah, okay, give me slats. This is a bit. Is it? Yeah. Mayday! Okay, we are inverted. Now we gotta get it up. Push the blue side up. Okay, let's kick rudder. Left rudder. Left rudder. Okay, right rudder. Right rudder. Okay. We gotta get it over again. At least upside down we're flying. Speed brake. Got it. Here we go!
After months of analysis, the NTSB revealed the truth. The accident was not an aerial mystery, but a maintenance failure. The jack screw, an essential screw that moves the horizontal stabilizer, was worn due to lack of lubrication. A tiny part forgotten in the protocols had doomed Flight 261. The investigations pointed the finger at Alaska Airlines for negligence in its maintenance practices, and the tragedy forced the industry to strengthen safety controls so that something like this would never happen again.
Flight 261 will be remembered for the tragedy, but also for the bravery of its pilots who fought until the last moment. The investigation left a clear lesson. In aviation, a single maintenance detail can mean the difference between life and death. Today, every time a plane takes off, it does so with stricter protocols, in memory of those who lost their lives on January 31st, 2000. And although the accident you just saw was chaotic, there are others that never managed to take off. The next flight lost its engine while beginning takeoff. We're talking about American Airlines Flight 191. A deafening roar shatters the air. In broad daylight, an American Airlines DC-10 loses its left engine during climb-out. The massive metal cylinder tears away from the wing, ripping cables, hydraulic lines, and any hope for a safe flight. In the control tower, controllers watch in horror as the aircraft banks dangerously, its left wing seemingly dragging it down.
Mayday, Mayday, Flight 305, we have an engine failure, requesting emergency landing.
In the cockpit, the captain and crew fight against a machine that no longer responds. But how did a flight, departing with 271 souls in perfect weather, reach this moment of absolute chaos? In the next few minutes, you'll hear the full story of American Airlines 191, the deadliest aviation accident on U.S. soil. It's May 25th, 1979, O'Hare International Airport, Chicago. American Airlines Flight 191 is preparing for its route to Los Angeles. The weather is perfect. Families wave goodbye with smiles, and the pilots review final checklists before takeoff. But no one, not in the terminal, not in the cockpit, not even in the maintenance team, suspects that in the left wing, engine number 1 hides a deadly trap. A vital component, damaged days earlier during improper maintenance, is about to fail. And when it does, there will be no way to stop what's coming. In the next few minutes, this routine flight will become the deadliest air disaster in U.S. history. Days before the flight, the DC-10's left engine had been removed for maintenance. But the method used wasn't the one recommended by the manufacturer. Instead of disassembling it piece by piece, the engine and its pylon were removed together using a crane. This caused invisible microfractures in the structure that attached it to the wing. No one saw them, no one looked for them, but the damage was there, just waiting for the force of takeoff to finish the job. And despite everything, that day, at 3:02 p.m., American Airlines Flight 191 is cleared for takeoff. The roar of the three engines shatters the quiet at O'Hare as the massive DC-10 begins its charge down the runway. The aircraft gains speed, the landing gear lifts from the asphalt, and then it happens. With a deafening metallic blast, the left engine tears completely away from the wing. The violent separation also rips away critical hydraulic and electrical lines, stripping control from the left wing. From the tower, controllers watch as the plane banks dangerously. In the cockpit, the captain fights to correct, but the DC-10 has already lost its deadly balance. In just 31 seconds after losing the engine, Flight 191's fate is sealed. At over 270 knots, the plane slams into an open field, barely 1.5 miles from the runway. The explosion is immediate. A fireball engulfs everything in its path. 273 lives are lost in what would become the deadliest air disaster in U.S. history. What you are about to hear is an actual recording of the black box at the time of the accident. Viewer discretion is advised. But first, if you are enjoying this video, please subscribe. It would help me a lot to continue growing. Now, let's go with the recording.
191, turn right 8330, clear for takeoff 32 right north lane. 191, on the way. I have control. Runway clear? Clear? Okay, setting takeoff front. Here we go.
In a matter of seconds, American Airlines Flight 191 ceased to exist. The investigation revealed that the cause was a structural failure caused by an improper maintenance method that had damaged the engine's pylon. The tragedy led to immediate changes in maintenance procedures and stricter inspections across the industry. But for the 273 families who lost loved ones, no technical improvement could ever fill the void. Today, a small memorial near O'Hare Airport honors those who departed on that sunny day, reminding us that in aviation, even the smallest error can have irreversible consequences.
But sometimes there are other accidents that end fatally, not due to technical errors, but to pilot error. The following flight, minutes before landing, ran out of fuel and ended up crashing. We are talking about United Airlines Flight 173. United Airlines Flight 173 was nearing Portland on a cold December evening in 1978. Passengers relaxed as the aircraft began its descent, expecting to land within minutes. But just as the crew extended the landing gear, something felt wrong. A loud thud echoed through the cabin, followed by unusual vibration. The landing gear light, the small, simple confirmation that the gear had locked, did not illuminate. The crew suddenly had a potential gear failure, and tensions spread through the cockpit. Instead of continuing the approach, the captain entered a holding pattern to diagnose the issue. The passengers felt the aircraft circling over the dark suburbs of Portland, unaware of the growing stress behind the cockpit door. The crew lowered the gear again, checked circuit breakers, and tried visual confirmation, but the indicator stayed dark. Every minute that passed increased the uncertainty. The aircraft circled, engines humming steadily, while the pilots focused entirely on the landing gear problem. But as they concentrated on this single issue, a far deadlier problem crept in unnoticed. The aircraft had been in the air far longer than planned. Fuel continued to burn, dropping lower and lower. A flight engineer repeatedly mentioned the decreasing levels, but the captain, fixated on the landing gear, believed they still had time. Outside the windows, the city lights shimmered beneath them, unaware of the emergency unfolding above. Then came the moment of truth. One by one, the engines began to flame out. First one, then another. The cockpit filled with warnings. The crew realized the horrifying truth. They were out of fuel. With almost no thrust left, the aircraft descended rapidly. The passengers felt the terrifying silence of engines winding down. The ground rose quickly in the darkness as the pilots tried desperately to reach the airport. But they didn't make it. United Flight 173 crashed into a wooded suburban neighborhood just miles from the runway. Houses shook from the impact. Emergency crews raced to the scene as flames consumed parts of the aircraft. Many passengers survived thanks to the crew's attempt to soften the descent, but several lives were lost, and the tragedy shocked the nation. Investigators later concluded that the root cause was not mechanical failure. It was human factors. The landing gear had actually deployed correctly. The indicator bulb was simply burned out. Instead of balancing tasks and monitoring fuel, the captain became entirely absorbed in troubleshooting. This accident exposed the profound dangers of fixation on a single issue while ignoring the overall situation. The aviation industry responded with one of the most important reforms in history: crew resource management. Pilots were retrained to communicate clearly, challenge decisions when necessary, and share responsibility in the cockpit. United 173 became the case that forever changed cockpit culture, ensuring that no pilot ever flies alone in their decision-making again. But sometimes there are a few that are captured on camera that are even frightening to watch several times. We're talking about National Airlines Flight 102. The morning at Bagram Airfield in Afghanistan was calm, quiet, and routine, until the enormous Boeing 747-400 cargo jet
of National Airlines Flight 102 began its takeoff roll. Loaded with multiple mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles, MRAPs, each weighing over 12 tons, the aircraft was carrying one of the heaviest and most dangerous cargo types in aviation. The 747 accelerated powerfully, lifting off the runway just like hundreds of cargo flights before it. But only seconds into the climb, something was terribly wrong. Soldiers and ground crew near the runway immediately noticed the aircraft pitching sharply upward, far steeper than normal. The massive jet looked as if it were clawing at the sky, fighting a battle it couldn't win. Inside the cockpit, the crew suddenly felt the impossible. The aircraft was no longer controllable. A violent shift in weight had thrown the jet completely off balance. One of the armored vehicles in the cargo hold had broken loose during takeoff, tearing through restraint straps and smashing through the bulkhead. The sudden 12-ton weight shift forced the aircraft's nose up, sending it into a near-stall attitude from which recovery was impossible. From the ground, a dashcam captured the horrifying moment as the aircraft climbed steeply, hung motionless in the air for a split second, then rolled to the right. For a brief moment, it seemed frozen. Then gravity took over. The giant 747 slammed nose first into the ground just beyond the runway and exploded into a massive fireball. The force of the impact sent debris flying in every direction as a towering column of smoke rose into the sky. The tragedy was instantaneous. All 7 crew members on board lost their lives in a matter of seconds. Investigations later confirmed the cause: improper cargo restraint. The armored vehicles, each weighing more than a small bus, were not secured according to required standards. When they shifted during takeoff, they punctured the aircraft's hydraulic systems, severed control cables, and caused a catastrophic loss of control. The jet was essentially doomed the moment it left the ground. Flight 102 became a chilling reminder that in cargo aviation, weight doesn't just matter. Securement can be the thin line between a safe flight and a fatal disaster. And the fact that every second of this tragedy was captured on video makes it one of the most shocking aviation accidents ever recorded. And finally, we'll look at one last unusual accident: a collision between planes on the highway caused by pilot error. We're talking about Japan Airlines Flight 516. On January 2, 2024, Japan Airlines Flight 516 was completing its final approach into Tokyo's Haneda Airport after a domestic flight from Sapporo. The aircraft, an Airbus A350 carrying nearly 400 passengers and crew, was landing during the busy New Year holiday period. As the jet touched down on the runway, everything appeared normal for just a split second. Then, without warning, a violent impact shook the aircraft. The A350 had collided with a Japan Coast Guard turboprop that was positioned on the runway. Almost instantly, flames erupted beneath the fuselage. Fire spread rapidly as the aircraft continued rolling, trailing sparks and burning fuel. Inside the cabin, smoke filled the air as alarms sounded and passengers realized something was terribly wrong. Despite the growing fire, the cabin crew acted with extreme precision. Emergency slides were deployed, and passengers were ordered to evacuate immediately. Within minutes, hundreds of people escaped onto the runway as the aircraft became fully engulfed in flames. Miraculously, every passenger and crew member on Flight 516 survived. The A350 burned almost completely, collapsing into a charred shell as firefighters battled the blaze. The dramatic footage of the burning aircraft quickly spread worldwide, stunning viewers who had never seen such a large, modern airliner consumed by fire, with everyone still alive. The investigation revealed that the accident was not caused by a technical failure of the passenger aircraft, but by a breakdown in runway coordination and communication.
The Coast Guard aircraft had entered or remained on the runway without proper clearance while Flight 516 was cleared to land. Contributing factors included miscommunication between air traffic control and the Coast Guard crew, confusion during nighttime operations, and the intense workload associated with holiday traffic. The Coast Guard aircraft was preparing for a humanitarian mission following an earthquake, adding urgency and complexity to the situation. Despite the tragedy for the Coast Guard crew, the survival of everyone aboard Flight 516 highlighted major advances in aviation safety. The A350's fire-resistant materials, improved evacuation procedures, and the crew's strict adherence to training all played a critical role. Japan Airlines Flight 516 became a powerful case study, proving that while accidents can still happen on the ground, modern aircraft design and disciplined crew response can turn what should have been a mass casualty disaster into a story of survival.